Welcome back to another edition of Dig Sports. I'm Andrew Alexander alongside Dig Sports editor Trey Mongrue. Trey, LSU has a 41-3 beatdown, a vintage LSU performance, defense, special teams, a strong running game. Is LSU back?
I'm kind of gun-shy to say they're back. However, like you said, a very vintage LSU performance. It looked a lot like the 2011 team. Not saying this team's as talented as that team, but, it was dominated by LSU's defense and special teams. And because the offense didn't make any, big mistakes, i.e. turnovers, LSU was able to, coast to a comfortable 41-3 win over a Kentucky team that, had some momentum going in. Are they back? No, I don't think so yet. There's still a lot of things this team needs to improve on, particularly offense. And there's still some questions on defense, although the front seven did look much better this weekend.
I would counter that by saying they never left, Trey. The Tigers have never left. The Tigers, unless they lose every game the rest of the season, the Tigers are going to have a fine season, maybe an 8-4, a 9-3, saving 7-5. If 7-5 is the worst season you have in 16 years, you're having a pretty good 15, 16-year run. So,
I'd agree. Before the Florida game 2 weeks ago, I said LSU had to win that game, else they're not going to be bowl eligible. And now they've won 2 in a row, got six wins right now, and I think down the line, maybe even this weekend against Ole Miss, they'll get another one, and maybe they could get 9 wins. I think it's possible.
Yeah, well, their biggest test, in order to get 9 wins, they're probably going to have to get a victory this week over the Ole Miss Rebels. Number 3 team in the nation comes in undefeated to Tiger Stadium. Just a 4-point favorite right now by the boys in Vegas. How do you see the Tigers faring this week offensively? Offense has struggled a little bit through the season, gradually improving. Strong running game for LSU, but still that passing game is very mediocre, we'll say. Jennings hasn't made any big mistakes, but not too many flashy plays. And this Ole Miss defense, especially that secondary, is one of the best in the nation.
Yeah, it's the first time since, I believe, 1959 that Ole Miss came into Tiger Stadium ranked, and we all know what happened in 1959. I know we were there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Billy Cannon's run, by the
Billy
way.
Cannon.
No, you're right. The offense does need to do some things. Against Florida and Kentucky, they were able to, coast by, not make any mistakes, let other facets of the team win the game for LSU. Against Ole Miss, against a defense that's allowing, I think, 160, 170 yards a game, probably one of the best defenses in the country, probably the best defense LSU will face this season. The offense is going to have to do some things, and it's going to be tough. You look at a guy like Sinquez Golson, comes into this game leading the SEC with 7 interceptions, but he's not it on this safety. You got guys like Mike Hilton, Cody Pruitt. All those guys are going to give the LSU receivers fits all Saturday long, and so it's going to be tough for the Tigers, a team that's already having trouble, putting together a consistent passing game. Going up against a secondary like this, it'll be tough.
They have the land shark D. They and they do so many things that LSU has not been good at. You mentioned their strong secondary against a weak LSU passing game. A strong defensive line with the likes of C.J. Johnson, Marquise Haynes out on the corners, Robert Kindici in the middle. These guys are monsters. And honestly, LSU's offensive line hasn't really played at the level of competition when they faced the big-time opponents of Mississippi State and Auburn.
Yeah, I would say that they've taken a step forward these last couple of weeks against Florida and Kentucky. However, LSU is really their strength is the run game. Obviously, they're going to have to establish that early. And against a Ole Miss front seven, like mentioned by you got guys like DJ Shackelford, the Kindici brothers, all those guys up front. It's going to be tough. They're only allowing 2.9 rushes yards per carry, so LSU has to establish that particularly early. Ole Miss has outscored opponents 55-3 in the first quarter, so that's when they usually make their run.
Number 1 scoring defense in the nation, number 6 rushing defense in the nation. This is definitely a formidable opponent that LSU is going to have to face. But on the defensive side, the Tigers looked very, very impressive against Kentucky, a Kentucky offense that people were very high on, at least the past few weeks, maybe not so much anymore. What are the Tigers going to be able to do to slow down an Ole Miss offense that has Bo Wallace, senior quarterback, who is second in the league right now with almost 1,900 yards, 17 touchdowns? How are they going to be able to slow down that guy?
Yeah, had you told me before the season that we'd be at this point and Bo Wallace would be considered a Heisman dark horse, I would have said you're crazy. However,
very dark.
But even when Bo Wallace wasn't the Bo Wallace that we know now, his 2 times against LSU, he's been very, very good. You look back to last year, he threw for over 346 yards when the Tigers went into Oxford. LSU secondary in particular is going to have some trouble on its hands. But one of the fun things that's been about this LSU team this year is that with all the youth that's involved, you've seen different guys step up. 2 weeks ago it was Leonard Fournette. Last week it was Jamal Adams. He was everywhere, whether it was special teams, nickelback, safety. He had a nose for the ball and quickly made moves on it, and I believe he led the team with 5 solo tackles, had a couple pass breakups. And it's been fun watching him with each passing game his role increases, and this is going to be a big test for him, and I think he's up to it.
Trey, you mentioned the LSU young secondary, a guy like Jamal Adams. They've been doing very well, but one problem they've had throughout the SEC play is containing big-time receivers. Whether it was Sammy Coates of Auburn, whether it was De'Runny Wilson of Mississippi State, they faced another top receiver like that, Laquan Treadwell, coming in, 4 touchdowns, leading receiver for the Ole Miss Rebels. How can the secondary try to contain Laquan Treadwell this weekend?
And it'll be tough, but the thing is, it's not just Treadwell. Between him, Vince Sanders, and Cody Core, they're all averaging over 45 receiving yards a game, all have more than 4 touchdowns this season. And so Wallace likes to spread it around to those 3, and that's going to be a big task for, Tre'Davious White, who's been pretty solid so far. Rashard Robinson's been a little shaky. However, Jalen Collins has come in a bit of a renaissance season for him. That's been kind of weird, and he's been playing well. And then Ricky Jefferson, the young safety who's coming in, and just like Jamal Adams, he seems to be getting more confidence with game after game. So LSU secondary has definitely improved throughout the season. This will be a big task for them to handle, and I think they're up to it.
Trey, as we finally close the book on last week's Tiger victory over Kentucky, who are your winners and losers from last week?
I think winners, you have to go Jamal Adams. Just, we mentioned him a little bit earlier, but the way he's played last week against Kentucky, it was a culmination of things. You go back to his first game against Wisconsin, he barely lined up on defense, was mostly on special teams, and his imprint on the game has just gotten bigger and bigger with each game, and he's quietly, or maybe not quietly, but he's definitely become one of the better defenders on this LSU team. Losers, he's not a loser by any means, but Brandon Harris, the fact that he only got in the game, with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, even though before so it was pretty much in hand for LSU. The fact that he didn't get in pretty much tells, us and the LSU fans that this is Anthony Jennings' team right now, and I don't think Harris will see the field for a while, considering you look at what LSU's opponents, who LSU has, finishing the season. Harris might not get in for quite some time.
My winner has got to be Terrence McGee. The senior running back came out and on only 9 carries, amassed 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really showed out. Probably his breakout game of the season, if there is such a thing as a senior. But really showed that he can still run. He's capable of running between the tackles. Outside, had a big kick return game, receiving yardage. He really did it all for the senior. My loser is the Kentucky football team. And obviously, they were the realistic losers in that they lost the game. But also, this is a team that was very overhyped coming into this game. People thought that Kentucky was going to beat LSU. I never believed that far. I didn't think it was going to be a lot closer game than the 39-point beatdown or 38-point beatdown it was. But this team is a couple years away, and that's what kind of happens when a young team comes into Death Valley. Like Les Miles says, it's a place where the dreams of enemies go to die. And so, a loser for this week is the Kentucky Wildcats. And Trey, big weekend in the SEC as always. There's really never not a big weekend in the SEC until you get to that weekend in November where everybody plays the cupcakes, except LSU, obviously. But some big-time matchups in the SEC. You've got that Kentucky team I just mentioned hosting the number 1 team in the country, Mississippi State. You've got Auburn hosting South Carolina, a hurting South Carolina team, and obviously the Ole Miss LSU matchup in Tiger Stadium. Who do you have winning some of these games?
Before we get to LSU, those first 2 matchups, I think Auburn and Mississippi State win rather handily over South Carolina and Kentucky, respectively. Those 2 teams just seem to be on a mission, Mississippi State in particular. And, I just don't think Kentucky and South Carolina can hang with either of those 2 teams. So I think they win big. As for this weekend with LSU, I actually have LSU squeaking one out, 23-21. Tiger Stadium, LSU has some momentum on its side. And Ole Miss, when they don't get those early first quarter leads, they tend to let opponents hang around a little bit. And I think this LSU team has the ability, if they are allowed to hang around, to, steal one in the end.
Well, Trey, I like Mississippi State. I like South Carolina to pull the upset.
Whoa.
And I like Ole Miss to come in and not only beat LSU, but beat LSU down handily, probably by 3 touchdowns. It's going to be a hotty-toddy kind of night down in Tiger Stadium, unfortunately, for all the LSU fans out there. For Dig Baton Rouge, I'm Andrew Alexander alongside Trey Mongrue. Hey, check out all your LSU coverage at digbatonrouge.com.